I have good news for you. We have an event on January 21st in Las Vegas. And if any of you aren't planning to attend that event, do whatever you can to get there. What you're going to leave there with is, for those of you in the Max business already, it's going to explode your business in a huge way. You will be so regretful if you don't get there. I know things you don't know, and I'm not allowed to talk about them. But I'm just saying, I never hide, because I'm responsible to the Lord for every single word that comes out of my mouth, and I'll be held accountable someday. But what's coming in Vegas is some of the most exciting developments that we've seen. So we want to have you there. So we've got somebody from Las Vegas. Who else has come from further? Yes?
Fallbrook.
Now, where is that?
Well, it's not further.
No, but that's further than Bakersfield.
No.
Oh, San Diego. I love San Diego. Oh, I love San Diego. If California ever falls into the ocean, San Diego's the one place I hope it stays. That's not very nice, but I do love San Diego. Yes. What part? North of Portland. So are you guys as wacko as the people in Portland, or are you a little more? Okay. We don't have anybody here from Portland, do we? Well, I was just there for Thanksgiving. You know, they don't even salt the roads. They would rather have people slide off the roads and get killed than disturb the environment. That's a little crazy. In Utah, man, I mean, we get snow and out come the trucks. And, but anyway, I'm glad to have everybody here. How many of you are guests? Don't even know why you're here, kind of. Okay, good. Somebody conned you into coming. I would like to say thank you to Estrella and her husband, Doug or Stefan, depending on what part of the world he's in. He is a triple board certified doctor. He is a cardiac surgeon. He is a hematologist. He is board certified in 2 different areas of pathology. Amazing doctor. This is his facility. He just received a $30 million grant on cardiac disease that is quite amazing. But he has this lab here and one in Stanford, and was nice enough to open this up. I like one of the things I love about Doug, or Dr. Harrington, for those of you that don't know him. If he ever performs on your heart, you want to call him Dr. Harrington. One thing I really love about him is he was a real skeptic about Max. Skeptic about the product, skeptic about a network marketing company. His mother-in-law had major issues. And for those of you that don't know this, when you have a supplement company, you're not allowed to talk about any issues specifically. That's part of FDA guidelines, and we respect those guidelines. But his mother-in-law had major issues, and his mother had major issues. And Australia, who went on it first, your mom or his mom?
My mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law, his mom went on it first.
Yeah, his mom.
Yeah. And he saw some amazing things happen that he never thought anything would make happen. And then Australia's mom went on it, and same thing. And so now the skeptic is no longer not a skeptic. Now he's investigating the science. We are a science-based company. We have, I believe, with us as our chief scientist, the #1 scientist in the world in the area that we specialize in. From the University of Minnesota. You'll hear more about him a little later. But he became a believer to the point of not only joining us on the marketing side, but is one of our real, I'm trying to think the right word. Basically, he tells everybody about it. It's that radical for him. He is really dove into the science. For our guests, how many of you have never heard the word before, glutathione? Anybody? Okay, so most of you have heard it. How many of you you've heard about it, but you don't know really what it is? Okay. Well, what you'll know what it is by the end of my talk. And, but it is something that it was a molecule or a tripeptide that was discovered in the late 1890s. There's been 42,000 studies on vitamin C. We all know about vitamin C and its benefits. There's been over 90,000 studies on glutathione. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I don't see a clock, so I guess I can talk, what, till 4 or 5? Okay, so when is my time over? 2:50. So I've got it, okay, good, so I can tell you everything. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself, and there's a reason I do that. Because for people that come here, we want you to join us and become a partner. That's why we were motivated, or whoever invited you here was motivated to invite you here. And who you partner with is a huge decision. It's a huge decision in marriage and business. It's no less a decision. Partnerships are amazing. They either accelerate success and take the ceiling off success, or they accelerate failure, depending on who you partner with. In fact, most partnerships, over 80% of all partnerships, accelerate failure. They're ineffective partnerships. Solomon in the book of Proverbs gave us 7 red flags to look for in a partner. And if we see any of those red flags, we're to run away from that person as a partner. We can be their friend. We just can't get intermingled with them because they'll take us down. But most people don't know those 7 red flags. So most partnerships fail. On the other hand, every extraordinary achievement in history, every one, has been achieved through a partnership. There was a man named John who, for 3 years, he was a bookkeeper in a dry goods store in Cleveland, Ohio. And in that 3 years, he never got a pat on the back, never got a promotion, never made more than $4 a week. And after 3 years without a raise, John could have looked at himself and said, this is as good as it's going to get. You know, year number 1, no raise. Year number 2, no raise. Year number 3, no raise. Well, then John met a partner, and he partnered with a guy named Henry Flagler. And Henry said, let's save money, borrow money, find some money, and let's start our own dry goods store. And John said, oh man, that'd be really cool. So they worked their butts off till they finally had put aside, after about a year and a half, $4,000. And with that, they were going to start a dry goods store. But something had happened in that year. A new business was coming into fashion. It was called the oil business. And they were in Cleveland, Ohio, and Cleveland, Ohio had over 100 different companies that were refining oil. But it was total chaos. Well, John got a vision of how, if he could put together a refining company in just the right way, he thought he could beat everybody in Cleveland as a refiner. And so he talked to Henry and he said, instead of putting our money in a dry goods store, let's start a refining company. And Henry said, we don't know anything about oil. He says, yeah, but I've got a vision. And he said, so let's find a partner that does know about refining oil. So they found one other partner. Okay? 30 years later, their little partnership owned 90% of the refineries in America, 80% of the pipelines, and 25% of the oil wells. And John was the richest man in the world. He was John D. Rockefeller. But that was the power of gaining a vision and effective partnering. I flunked out of 9 jobs in my first 6 years after college. Can anybody top that, 9 and 6? I've only met one guy that's topped it. He's a pastor, my dearest pastor friend in the world, a guy named Keith Kraft in Dallas, Texas. And Keith flunked out of 9 jobs in 1 year. So he beat me. But Keith is an amazing man. But I fell out of these jobs. I couldn't succeed no matter how hard I tried. And I really tried hard. In fact, every job I had, I was usually the first in at the office and the last to leave, apart from security. Any corporation I worked for, even big ones. So I really worked hard. And I wasn't stupid. I had a pretty good IQ. My mom's IQ was only 5 points under Einstein. She was 182 and was a mathematical genius with a photographic memory. And I didn't have her IQ, but I got a tiny corner off her page. So I wasn't stupid. Okay? Even though that's what my dad said one time. It really broke my heart when he called me stupid. But anyway, but he changed his mind later on. But I couldn't succeed. I wasn't stupid, I worked hard, and yet I typically held a job for about 4 to 5 months. And one day, one of my best friends in life was visiting me from Chicago. I was living in Phoenix. His name was Gary Smalley. Have any of you ever heard of Gary Smalley? And Gary was visiting me from Phoenix, from Chicago. I just lost my 6th job, and I was broke. I mean, not even a dime in the checking account. And the only reason we had food that weekend when Gary was visiting me, or staying, he even stayed at our little house, was because 2 single women from a Bible study I taught every week had anonymously left groceries on our doorstep. And I didn't find out for 33 years who those 2 women were. I only found out a couple Thanksgivings ago. But that's how broke I was. And Gary was visiting me, and I said, Gary, I just don't understand. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I just can't succeed. I had a degree in marketing and business from Arizona State University. Didn't make any difference. I could not succeed. In fact, my first job out of college kind of tells it all. I'll tell you about 2 jobs. And I'm giving you this background once again because I want you to take what I say. I want you to weight it for truth. And when you see what I've been through and the failures I've been through, then you'll really know I'm for real. I'm not just somebody who's always done right. But on job number 1, I went to work for an insurance company. I graduated in marketing, but there were no marketing jobs in Phoenix, Arizona for a new graduate. So I became a management trainee of a life insurance company and working in one of their local branches. Have any of you ever sold life insurance? 20 years. 20 years. I really respect you. Now, let me tell you what happened. So that we would understand what life insurance agents had to deal with, we all had to get our licenses and sell. And my salary was $500 a month and $100 a month draw against commissions if I sold anything. Well, I worked at that company. That was one of my longer jobs. That one lasted 6 months. But during that 6 months, I set a company record for manufacturer's life. This is in 1971. And this is 2010, so that's 39 years ago. To this day, it still is the corporate record. Nobody's ever beat this record. In fact, it may be an life insurance industry record. I only worked there for 6 months, but I sold 2 policies. Nobody has ever underperformed that in manufacturer's life. But the reason I like the thought of life insurance is my boss, R.W. Grange, said the good thing about it is you get residual income. You sell a policy one time, and then you get commissions on that for the rest of your life or the rest of the policyholder's life from just one sale. So that sounded real good. But I found out right after they asked me to leave that that was a lie. Because both of the policies I sold lapsed. Within 2 weeks of me leaving the company, I couldn't afford my premiums anymore, so I had to lapse mine. This is a true story. You guys are laughing. It was very sad. And my best friend, a guy named Lynn Goss, who's actually a friend of mine that's here today from my old days in Phoenix. So she knows these names. I know she knows. Her brother-in-law worked for the same guy that I worked for. But Lynn Goss was my best friend, and he was a seminary student, and I had sold him a policy, and he heard that I had been fired, And so he called me up and he said, Steve, do I have to keep my life insurance policy? And I said, Lynn, I count on that income every month. And he said, well, how much do you make? And I said, well, my commission is $15 a month. He said, great, I'll write you a check for $15. That'll save me 20. And I said, no, that's okay. So that one lapsed. So now I had nothing. But that was job number one. Job number three was a little better. It was a real marketing job. I was actually an assistant product manager in the marketing department of a billion-dollar company. I was the low man on the totem pole. And the vice president of marketing for that company was the marketing guru of the city of Philadelphia. He had been head of marketing for Scott Paper. When this insurance company had attracted him away, they were high-fiving everybody because they had gotten this guy, man, that was going to change everything. They had this real genius marketer, right? And he hired me. So I was working for him, you know, a couple steps down. There was him, and then a product manager, and then me, an assistant product manager. And he had hired me on probation. He had hired me that because I'd only been out of college less than a year, and I'd already gone through 2 jobs. So he wondered, you know, is this guy going to stick around? So probation means they watch you for 6 to 9 months, and if you do well in 6 to 9 months, they give you a raise from the subhuman wage they're paying you. And if, on the other hand, you don't do well, then they let you go. So the first day on the job was really exciting, and because I was finally in a marketing job. But the next morning, before I went to work, I got a call at 6:30 in the morning. My wife was living about 160 miles away in Washington, D.C., because I had lost that job just a few weeks earlier, and she was 9 months pregnant, so she stayed to deliver the baby. Well, she called and said, we're having the baby. So I called a friend. I said, tell my boss I'm taking the day off. It's only my second day. I'm taking the day off because my wife's having a baby. And surely he'll understand. And this person worked for the president of the company. She said, oh, he'll understand. Don't worry about it. So I went ahead and I drove as fast as I could to Washington, D.C., Holy Cross Hospital, pulled into the parking lot, run into the emergency room and said, by the way, I'm ADD. Has anybody figured that out yet? I'm the highest ADD ever measured by the University of Utah. Okay? If there's a fly on the wall in this room during my talk, we're changing subjects. I'm that ADD. So anyway, so I rushed into the emergency room and I said, hi, where's my wife? Where's my wife? And they said, well, what's her name? Bonnie. Bonnie what? Scott. And so I remembered the same as my last name. And so they said, well, what's she here for? And I said, we're having a baby. She went into labor. They said, well, that's not here. That's labor and delivery. I said, okay, well, can you tell me where that is? Well, just a minute. So they called. Then they hang up. She's not here. I said, what do you mean she's not here? It was false labor. She went back home. No, it's not false labor. I said, ma'am, I'm on probation. We're having that baby today. Well, she got a real scared look on her face. She thought the other kind of probation. So we didn't have cell phones back then. This is 1971, so I went to the payphone and I called up where my wife was staying, a friend's house there in D.C. And she answered, and I said, I'm here at Holy Cross Hospital. I said, how come you're not here? She goes, oh, it was false labor. I said, Bonnie, we got to have that baby today. She said, oh, we're not having it today. It was only false labor. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm on probation. We got to have it today. I said, I'll see you in about a half an hour because it's a big, long drive to where I was. And where she was, it was a house that was on this hill that went down to the Potomac River, a big 30-acre estate of a friend. And so what did we do? For 3 hours, we walked up and down that hill. And still no labor. And finally, at 6 o'clock, it happened. She went into labor. Have any of you ever been in Washington, D.C.? There's a big beltway. It's called the 495. You know what happens at 6 o'clock at night? It turns into a parking lot. Yeah. about a 70 or 80 mile, 90 mile parking lot. And so it took us 2 hours to get to the hospital. And my wife was screaming in the back seat the whole time, hurry, hurry, faster, faster. There's no GPS back then. There was no back way to get there. This was the only way I knew. I was from Phoenix. I didn't know DC. So anyway, but that night, the baby finally came about 40 minutes after midnight. And as men couldn't go into labor and delivery back then. And so the nurse came out, she said, follow me, and there was my sweet little girl in my wife's arms. And I looked in those blue eyes for the first time, first child, and I felt something I had never felt before. Just a whole different kind of love. Nothing like any kind of love I'd ever experienced. And I just stared at her. And the nurse said, you want to hold her? And I said, sure. And I held her for a few minutes, and then the nurse said, well, we've got to take her to the nursery now. And I said, well, can I come? And she said, no. She said, you have to stay out. She said, but I'll put her right next to the window. We'll open the curtain and you can look at her. That was about 10 minutes till 1. I looked at her for the next hour and a half. And I was amazed. And as I looked at that little girl, I started making all these promises to her. You're going to go to college. I'm going to take care of you. Someday we'll have a house in a backyard and the swing set. And you're going to have a great life. And I got on the highway back to Philadelphia. And on the highway, as soon as I was on the 95, a voice came into my head. And it literally said, liar, liar, liar. You've been out of college for less than a year. You're on job number 3. You're half of the wage earner, half of the American wage earner in your wages. You live in a dumpy apartment. It doesn't even have a backyard or a swing set or a playground or anything. And you've just made all these promises to your daughter. How are you going to keep them? Well, I started work the next day more dedicated, more committed to succeed than any time in my life. I had a new reason that far surpassed anything I had ever had before for succeeding. And 9 months later, my boss called me into his office. I thought, today's the day. He's going to tell me I'm not on probation. I'm going to get a raise. And I go into his office, it's right after lunch, and he said, have a seat. I sit down. And he looks at me, and he said, Steve, you are the single greatest disappointment in my entire career. And you're laughing. This is a tearjerker. What's wrong with this group? He said, Steve, you're the single greatest disappointment in my entire career. You will never succeed in marketing. You have 20 minutes to clean out your desk. I had spent 4 years at Arizona State getting a degree in marketing, and now the marketing guru of Philadelphia told me I was never going to succeed in marketing. That was job number 3. I didn't know I had 6 more jobs to lose in the next 4 years. But I did perfect the art of failing. And there's really an art to that. I learned how to quit right before they fired me. Like usually about 24 hours. And the reason that's so cool is because it looks better on your resume that you quit than you were fired. And also it really frustrates the guy that's going to fire you. Because he's been planning on it. He's been telling everybody, man, next week I'm going to fire his butt. And then all of a sudden, whoa, he quit on me. And then he's got to go up to human resources and explain why this guy quit on him. You know? So it just kind of flips the table on him. So anyway, but I learned how to do that. I told Gary that day, I've just lost my 6th job. We're broke. I don't know what to do, Gary. And Gary said something that we should remember. You know, a lot of people are hurting these days. A lot of people come to us with heartaches. And it's real easy to real quick flip out an answer for somebody. But that's not what a wise man does. A wise man says what Gary Smalley said. He said, let me pray about it. And the next morning he came in and he said, Steve, I've got the answer. I said, great. The answer to what? Because I'm ADD, so I completely forgot the question. And he said, you know, you wanted to know what you have to do to succeed and how to turn things around. I said, yeah. He said, I've got the answer. I said, really? He said, yeah, how would you like to be wiser than all your bosses? And I'm 26 years old, and I literally said, yeah, right. He said, no, there's something you can do if you do it for 2 years. In 2 years, you'll be wiser than all your bosses. And in 5 years, you'll probably be a millionaire. And that really made me laugh, because I said, Gary, the only reason you have breakfast this morning is because some girls in the Bible study, or somebody from the Bible study left some groceries. And I said, but what do I do? And he said, there's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, 31 days in the month. Every day read a chapter of the day with pencil and paper in hand. And write down the wisdom and insights you get as you read. And apply those to your job the next day. And just keep doing that. He said, in 2 years, that'll take you through Proverbs 24 times. And I promise you, it will change your life. I started doing that. I lost job number 7. I lost job number 8, all within a year. And then I started job number 9. And on job number 9, I was working for a catalog company in Arizona. And all of a sudden, in that job, all 15 strategies that I found from the book of Proverbs came into play. And in 3 months, I was able to double their sales from 30 million to 60 million. What was my position? Same position it had been on job number 3, assistant product manager. But now, they were wanting to make me vice president of marketing at the age of 27. Give me a company Mercedes and double my salary. And but I didn't do that. The only reason they offered me that is because I gave a letter of resignation to the president. And he said, why are you leaving us? You just hit the grand slam home run of all time. And I said, because I have a chance to start my own company with a friend in Pennsylvania. And he says, you're leaving us for a startup? I said, yeah. He said, well, how about I double your salary, make you vice president of marketing, and give you a company Mercedes? Would that keep you? I said, oh, Mr. Siegel, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever done to me. But no, it won't keep you. And he said, well, what kind of startup are you doing? I said, well, it's just an idea I have. And I said, my friend has the money. And he says, well, what kind of seed money do you have? I said, no, it's not agriculture. It's going to be a marketing. It's going to be a marketing company. And he goes, oh. He says, how much money are you starting the business with? And I said, I don't have any money. You know, I'm broke. But I said, my friend has $5,000. That's okay. That's what I'm doing. And he said, you're leaving us for a startup company with $5,000. And I said, yeah. And he said, are you nuts? He said, Steve, these things never work out. Don't be stupid. You have turned us from a $30 million a year company to a $60 million a year company. I'm offering you the chance that no young kid your age ever gets. And you're leaving that to start a company with 5. You don't have a prayer. Think about it. And I said, Mr. Siegel, I thank you, but you know what? I've thought about it. I just had my second child. He's only 6 weeks old. Someday I'm not going to be able to take a risk anymore. And I really believe this is what I need to do. He said, will you give me 10 hours a week to manage the TV campaign that you created? I said, yeah, I can give you that. Are you kidding? After what you just offered me? And he said, good, I'll keep you on full salary for a year. He didn't know it, but he had just doubled my income. See, already, really crazy. Because I was only going to make about $12,000 going to the new company, and I was making 18 where he was at. So anyway, so I left, but I left because I knew something Mr. Siegel didn't know. I knew the book of Proverbs. I had learned wisdom. And 5 months after we started this little company with $5,000, our sales hit $1 million a week. Life changed. 5 years later, the catalog company went out of business, and we were doing $250 million a year in sales. And so everything changed, and I built company after company, a total of around 24 different companies. Some did 50 million, some did 100, a lot did 200. One did 300, and if any of you have ever seen Total Gym with Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley, that's done over $2 billion. That's our company that's now been on the air for 15 years. And life was really nice. I kind of put together a marketing formula for television marketing. Oh, there I am. That's picture's like 3 years old, and that one's like 90 years old. Chuck's 70 now. He looks a little different. His toupees doesn't fit right anymore. So. But don't ever tell him that, or you won't walk home. I'll have to carry you. But anyway, and it's not multi-million, it's a multi-billion. We've done we've passed the 2 billion mark now. But anyway, life was nice. I never planned on doing anything other than television. Because I didn't take a lot of work. I kind of perfected a formula. My home run rate in that industry, the average hit rate in television direct marketing is 1 out of every 220 infomercials that are produced succeed. So it's under 0.5%. My hit rate over a 34-year career was 62%. So that's over 120 times the industry rate. So I'd really perfected how to make it work. And like I said, I never planned on doing anything else. Well, one day, an investment banker came to me and said, I'm going to introduce you to the single biggest breakthrough you'll ever find in your lifetime. And he said, I've done my due diligence on you, and I know that one of the keys to your formula is you're always looking for breakthroughs. And I said, that's right. A breakthrough is a product that does something nothing else on earth does. It's not new and improved. It is a whole new product, a whole new approach to a problem. And when he said that, I thought, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. See, I'd become the official marketing arm for QVC. Do you all know who QVC is? Okay, well, they tried 39 infomercials in a row, and they all failed. And they're headquartered about 2 blocks from our company. Our hit rate at the time was over 75%. And they came to us, Doug Britt, the CEO of QVC, came into our door one day, said, I'm going to make you guys the best offer anybody's ever made you. I'm going to let you be our official marketing arm. Any product we see that has potential, we'll bring over to you. You can sign a deal with the inventor, pay us a little tiny royalty, and let you make the fortune, because we don't have a clue what we're doing when it comes to infomercials. So we signed a contract, 5 years. They brought us over 1,000 products a year. Out of those 1,000 products, we never made one infomercial on one of the products. Not one. Why? No breakthroughs. New and improved, gimmicks, hype, no breakthroughs. But now this investment banker has just told me he's going to introduce me to the single biggest breakthrough I'll ever see in my lifetime. And I literally thought, yeah, right. And I said, what kind of breakthrough? He said, a medical breakthrough. I said, really? Now, Utah is the home of medical device breakthroughs. Stents came out of Utah, certain kinds of stents, the artificial heart, the artificial lung, they were all started in Utah. Some of the biggest companies in Utah are medical device companies. So I thought, oh, good, maybe he's got an acne one. You know, you wave it over the face, and all the acne disappears. That's the one I really want. And I said, okay, so what kind of product? And he said, a supplement. And as soon as he said that, I put up my hand, and I said, not interested, Rob. His name was Rob Harrison. And he said, why? And I said, I don't believe in supplements. Oh my gosh, look at you. This is a guy from my long past. Hi, Dick. Woohoo! This was an unexpected surprise of being here. These guys go back to when I was that 23-year-old kid that couldn't succeed. And so anyway, where was I? Anybody remember? No, I'm serious.
Supplement.
Oh yeah. So he said it's a supplement. I told you I was ADD. And he said it's a supplement. And I put my hand up and I said, no thanks, Rob. I really don't believe in supplements. I said, I've tried lots of them. I never see any difference. All they've ever done for me is turn light yellow urine into bright yellow urine. And I said, I don't need to spend money on that. I just hold it longer. And it happens automatically. And he just shook his head. He said, no. He said, Steve, this is really different. And I said, how's it different? He said, what it does in the cell is so significant that it can be verified and quantified through a blood test. I said, really? He said, yeah, and what it does is so significant, it's received the same kind of patent that an ethical drug does. And I said, wow, what does it do? And he said, well, I'm not qualified to tell you, but I'll have the scientist doctor that invented it tell you about it. I said, well, tell me about him. And he said his name was Dr. Robert Keller. He was triple board certified in oncology, immunology, and hematology. That he had authored more than 100 papers, had authored chapters to more than 75 medical textbooks, had been immunologist of the year for 6 consecutive years. Oh, there he is. And just went on and on. So I said, well, send me his resume. Well, he sent me a 29-page circumvita, which is a resume for a doctor. And I was blown away by it. So I called up Dr. Keller and I said, tell me about your product. And he said, well, I'll tell you. And he started telling me, and I think a fly went down one of my windows because I completely lost him about 2 minutes into it. And I said, look, I'm ADD. I'm not going to follow this on the phone. I'm going to be at Chuck Norris's house next week filming. Why don't you let me fly you there from Florida? I'll have a film crew there for 2 days. If I like what I hear, I'll put you on camera. I'll do a little interview. He said, great. So I flew him to Dallas. And that night, he gave me and Chuck and Chuck's wife Gina and Chuck's attorney, a guy named Mike Forshee, a biology lesson. And that biology lesson changed my life. So I'm going to give it to you now, not so you can repeat it, but just so you'll never again make the mistake of thinking this is a vitamin or a mineral or just another supplement. You'll see why I got excited. And it's kind of cool, especially if you love the fact or believe that our incredible bodies had a designer. I believe, because every cell is like a universe. It's like a solar system. So much goes on in the cell, it's unbelievable. And but I'm going to make it really simple. So he drew up a picture right here, a circle. Now, there weren't 2 more circles. It wasn't an Amway meeting. 3 down, 3 down. But the circle was the human cell. And he said, every cell has a mission. And I like that. The Purpose-Driven Life. Have any of you ever heard of that book?
Yes.
Yeah, that had come out. And I love the thought that every cell in our body has a mission to accomplish during its lifetime, no matter how short or long that lifetime might be. And he said every cell has a mission, but to accomplish their missions, they need motion, they need life. And he said, so they get their motion from little motors called mitochondria, and a cell can have a few hundred mitochondria, or it can have a few thousand mitochondria. But these are little motors that give the cell the motion that they need to do whatever they're going to accomplish. Well, for the mitochondria to do that, for the cell to operate, it needs energy. So the cell manufactures its own energy substance, a fuel called ATP. The only problem is, that's the good news. How many of you have a car that manufactures its own fuel?
That would be a breakthrough.
That would be a breakthrough, thank you. Now, that would be a breakthrough. We have had automotive engineers for over 100 years. They've had the assistance of the world's finest computers for over 60 years, and yet we still don't have a car that can make its own fuel. You have, depending on who you listen to, some people say we have 13 to 20 trillion cells. Some people say 100 to 150 trillion cells. They count the life-supporting bacteria in some of those higher numbers. So nobody really knows how many we have. But just say we have 15 trillion. So every single cell has little motors, mitochondria. They manufacture their own fuel, which is amazing. And when they manufacture that fuel, the only problem is it creates a little oxidative flame. And left unattended, that flame would destroy the cell. So the designer of the cell put a fire extinguisher in it that is 3 proteins in 1 molecule. That's what a tripeptide is, 3 amino acids in 1 molecule. And that's called glutathione. And glutathione very easily extinguishes that fire, so the cell can manufacture all the ATP it needs without destroying itself. And that's a good thing. But that's not all this little molecule does. It also, the cell is under constant attack. Oops. I've never had this many colors before. So this is really cool for an ADD guy. So the cell is under constant attack by free radicals. And a free radical is simply a thief. All it wants to do is to steal an electron from the cell. And when it does that, it damages the cell and leaves it vulnerable. Kind of like pulls down the defenses of the cell. And that damage we call inflammation, intercellular inflammation. That's the bad news. The good news is this amazing, miraculous molecule that the designer put in that not only takes care of this fire, takes care of free radicals by donating one of its electrons, so the cell doesn't have to. So there's no damage, and when it donates that electron, it arrests that free radical, neutralizes it. As my favorite scientist in the world says, it sequesters it, and it can't do the damage. The amazing thing about the glutathione molecule, as soon as it does that, it recycles itself. It's the only antioxidant, period, that recycles itself. It instantly recycles itself so it can donate another electron to another free radical. It can put out another ATP fire and so on. On top of that, it's the only antioxidant that handles all types of oxidation that assault the cell. Other antioxidants each only handle one type of oxidation. But glutathione, as your body's master antioxidant, handles all types of oxidation. Doesn't matter what the source is or what the makeup is of the oxidative factor, it handles it. So that's pretty cool. Well, that was kind of Dr. Keller's story. You're going to hear a little bit about Dr. Nagasawa after I'm done. But Dr. Nagasawa says, oh, it does much more than that. So he added to Dr. Keller's science lesson with Steve Scott. He spent a little time with me and blew me away. Here's what he showed me, what else the glutathione molecule does. The nerve center, the brain of the cell, is a thing called the nucleus. And glutathione is charged with the responsibility of protecting the nucleus of the cell. That's pretty important. It's also charged with the responsibility of protecting the mitochondrial DNA of the cell. Do you know what scientists tell us is the primary driving force of aging? Guess what? It is the breakdown of the mitochondrial DNA. And that ultimately causes inflammation, and inflammation is another driving force of accelerated aging. Well, glutathione molecule protects the mitochondrial DNA, it protects the nucleus of the cell, but that's not all. You drink that nice glass of orange juice, and in comes vitamin C. But vitamin C can't be used by the cell. It's in an unusable state. It can't even get into the cell. So glutathione opens the doorway and allows vitamin C to come in, but even when it gets in the cell, it still can't be used until glutathione synthesizes it into a usable state. And now your cell can use that vitamin C. And that's the case with any antioxidant. Vitamin E, any antioxidant you ingest through eating or drinking, a juice or whatever, cannot be used by the cell until glutathione makes it usable. Glutathione also does the same thing with proteins. Eat that nice steak, the protein can't be utilized by the cell, and glutathione is one of the synthesizing agents that make protein usable. Pretty important. But that's not all it does. I'm sounding like an infomercial. It also, one of the primary detoxifiers of the cell. Our cells store toxins. We overwhelm our liver with pharmaceutical drugs, with the preservatives in food, all the things that we do to our body that bring about toxins into our cells. Well, glutathione detoxifies the cell. In fact, liver cells have 1,000 times more glutathione than any other cell in the body because it uses glutathione in the detoxification process. So it's critical for that.